Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
With Ukrainian cities once again being pounded to rubble and the casualties mounting, I'm afraid I have to ask once again, why the hell are we being so slow in giving those heroic Ukrainians the weapons they so desperately need? Because if Ukraine falls, it will be a catastrophe for the West. It will be the end of Western hegemony, and we will have no one to blame but ourselves. Read my column in the Daily Mail.
Ukraine, a warning to the world. Welcome back to Training Tuesday here on the Rob Maness Show live on Patriot.tv and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, the war in Ukraine is not going well from the West perspective, as former Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson's panicked presentation reveals. Sadly, dead young men and women can't tell us the long and sordid tale of how and why this war started, but there are a few very knowledgeable individuals in the world who can. And we have one with us today, the author of the book, Ukraine, a warning to the world, as my guest. From America's involvement in the so-called Orange Revolution through the CIA-supported Maidan Revolution and beyond into the intentions of the globalists as their final outcome, this book provides detailed analysis based on the facts on the ground, and we should all read it and heed its warnings. The book follows the journey of French entrepreneur Thierry Laurent Pillet, whose life became entangled with the crisis in Ukraine, prompting his deep exploration of the country's history and socio-political dynamics. Amidst the 2014 coup d'etat in Ukraine, Pillet, a former speed skiing athlete and serial entrepreneur with a decade of living in the U.S. and Ukraine, emerges as a valuable source of intelligence. His mission is to mediate and mitigate the escalating crisis globally. The book challenges the mainstream narratives by revealing truths obscured by manipulations driven by cross-cutting interests. From the rise of Nazism and the Maidan protests to political assassinations, ethnic cleansing, the MH17 incident, and references to biological weapons, including COVID, it exposes the realities that are often overlooked, shedding light on governance's cowardice and hypocrisy. Thierry, welcome to the Rob Maness Show, sir.
Well, I would like to thank you very much for welcoming me on your show, and it's a great honor, in fact, to be able to talk to you. Actually, I would like, before to discuss the situation that is bringing us to this crisis, to set up a disclaimer. I have absolutely no personal interest within agencies, governments, and all the information that I am delivering. This is on my free will, and I am welcoming people to take care of them and to look at whatsoever I have been writing in a book, because I do believe that it is of our responsibility to understand fully what is this crisis about, what has been triggering it, and what is the grand plan of those people that has been organizing this gigantic mess. Actually, I'm very impressed by the introduction that you have been making, because it feels to me that I do not have to say anything, as you have been summarizing everything in 2 minutes. It's really impressive, really impressive.
Yeah, but your book, Thierry, is very detailed, and I hope you will plan on coming back to the show, because I want to do a series on this by chapter, because some of the chapters are just compelling information that I don't think Americans really understand, and starting with the present, the Russian-Ukraine war. The UK forces are losing ground every day, especially on the Eastern Front. I mean, the Russians aren't making gains in miles in some crazy rush into Ukrainian forces, but every single day, Ukraine's forces are losing ground and falling back a little bit more as the Russian armed forces are doing what they do very well, which is take and hold ground. And unfortunately, though, the young men and women of Ukraine and Russia, really, that are dying, they can't tell this tale, but it certainly looks like some of the things that you are concerned about that you lay out in the book are becoming reality when as an observer of what I think are the facts. It's really hard to tell these days. Am I right?
Well, actually, oh yes. Actually, in fact, I closed the book in June 2023. And what I am observing of the conclusion I have been writing at least 10 months ago is happening right now. And this is very surprising to people when they are reading it, because they were thinking that I'm a sort of a Nostradamus of the geopolitics. But in fact, it's not very complex to understand the way that the story will be ending, because it is a question of observation and understanding the way that Russia has been acting, in fact, to take the control of the situation. You are a professional, and you have been handling high position within the army, and you know what war is about. A war is about supply chain. If you have the right adequation between your resources and your needs, you know how to organize it, and you need, in fact, to supply whatsoever is necessary on the front line to make sure that you are taking over the situation. Then you can be sure that you're going to win. And actually, Russia has been organizing its industrial complex in the way that they will be, how to say that, they will be anticipating that there will be a problem, and this war will be happening. During 8 years after the coup of Maidan, as you said, that was organized by the CIA, but also with a high responsibility of the European Union, and I will explain in the development why this is happening.
Yeah, let me bring up a picture here. Pick two, Mr. Producer. The good, the bad, and the ugly is what you label this in the book. And I think it's at the beginning of your book, but I think it lays out some of the things that very specifically, Terry, as far as how somebody's mind should be organized in thinking about this particular situation of violence that's not just associated with Eastern Europe, because it's much bigger than that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Actually, in fact, I've been inspired by the movie of Clint Eastwood, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And this is why I've been taking over these global pictures. And I have been trying to lay out, in fact, the different actors that has been helping in the development of this crisis. So basically, if we look at the behavior of Vladimir Putin during the 8 years that has been following the coup of Maidan, I can say that he has been extremely patient. If it was people like Gerasimov or Shoigu at the place of Vladimir Putin, or if you had somebody like Medvedev, I do believe that Russia would have been interfering within the conflict much before the situation. So basically what Vladimir Putin has been trying is to put together some diplomatic mechanism in the way that he will be avoiding this conflict, because he knew that this would be destroying the relationship between two countries that are like sisters. If you look at the demography and the social pictures of Russia and Ukraine, you will understand that most of the Ukrainians, they have family in Russia and vice versa, because Ukraine never been a real country. It was a sort of oblast of Russia. So basically, there was a lot of exchange of population that explained the very tight relation that Russia had with Ukraine. And this is what Vladimir Putin wanted to avoid, to make sure that the relationship between the two countries will be always on the same page and in complete sync, because of the social aspect of the relationship between those two people. Okay?
Yeah.
What has been... wait, what did you want to say?
Yeah. So I was just going to ask you, under the bad, and as the show progresses, I'm gonna ask you more about it. But under the bad, those are both neo-Nazi type organizations, individuals, and symbols, aren't they? And I think it's very important for the American people to understand where that comes from, and that it's a reality, that it's not fake news, as many of the propagandists say it is.
Well, we need to come back a little bit in the history of Ukraine, and especially the period of the Second World War. During this time, you had two individuals, Suskiewicz and Bandera, who were developing, in fact, the concept of nationalism in Ukraine. And those people, during the Second World War conflict, saw a great opportunity, in fact, to take over the Russophone population in Ukraine, in fact, to install a sort of state of Ukraine that never been existing. So basically, those two individuals have been leading the effort of collaboration with the SS Galice, and they have been perpetrated an amount of murders and mass killing that is absolutely outrageous. This is the politician Simone Veil that has been making a lot of research on this period of the year of the history of Ukraine, and she has been discovering that those two individuals were responsible for the murder of 1.4 million people, Russian, Tsigan, and Jewish people. And what is really, really shocking right now is that all over Ukraine, you will see the name of those two guys that has been tagged into streets, into avenues, boulevard, places. And what is really terrible is to see that the monument of Baby Yar, which is a symbol of the massacre of 33.5 thousand people, Jewish and Tsigan, this monument is leading to a street called the Stepan Bandera Boulevard inside of Kiev. And this is one of the main avenues where you will see most of the brands that are developed in Europe, like Metro, like Decathlon, like Ocean, and so on. So this is a sort of shame for European Union to accept the fact that street could be rebranded and renamed on the name of neo-Nazi criminal of the Second World War. Now, if we have to reference to the third layout that I have been putting together, which is the ugliest people, this is the hypocrite politician that has been leveraging those forces, in fact, to put the government of Yanukovych on the ground during the coup of Maidan. So basically, they are claiming that the European values are the best value in the world, that we are representing democracy, that we are representing openness of minds, respect of laws, and this and that, that they are pushing back, in fact, any kind of extremist movement, and especially the political movement like Florian Philippot in France, like Marine Le Pen, like Zemmour. But on the other side, in Ukraine, they are promoting, in fact, this ideology by using them, in fact, to destroy the Russophone population. So basically, there is a sort of antinomy between the values that they want to promote and what they are supporting in Ukraine. This is completely crazy, you know? It's a sort of dichotomy of the mind that they are proceeding, and I do believe that this is a symptom of schizophrenia. You see?
Yeah, I want to dive into that, the European Union, the United States, and NATO's play in that when we come back from this break, Terry. And we've got a hand up in the audience, so we'll take a question from the live audience when we come back from the break. As I told you before the show, we have a lot of questions amongst Americans about the situation and a lot of concern, just like that shares a lot of your concerns. So we'll be right back with Terry Pillay, the author of Ukraine, a warning to the world, right after this message here on the Rob Maness Show at Patriot.tv.
Hi neighbor, Pat Boone here. Today, I want to help you find some peace of mind concerning your money. Like it or not, we're all living in a financial war zone. That's right. We're watching our hard-earned dollars get crushed by inflation. In fact, recently inflation reached its highest level in 40 years. And on top of that, cash, which has always represented freedom and privacy, is more and more being replaced by a cashless system. That's right. Powerful forces are definitely waging a war against cash. So I'm encouraging you to prepare before it's too late. Call or text the number on the screen for a free report, The Secret War on Cash from Swiss America. Discover how a few simple steps can protect your money as well as your privacy and your peace of mind. So call or text for your free report, The Secret War on Cash, and make sure to mention Pat Boone sent you.
We've learned through the pandemic we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
So here's a story that's been kind of forgotten, but Toria Nuland, who was the driving force behind the war in Ukraine, helped start the war in Ukraine, in January threatened to blow up the Nord Stream pipelines so that Russia couldn't send gas to Europe. Remember this?
I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
So then in September, somebody blew up the pipelines, and that was the biggest man-made environmental disaster in history. If you're worried about climate change, you should be in tears because of the amount of carbon that emitted into the atmosphere. So it was pretty obvious to us the Biden administration was involved in this. We said that, and we were immediately denounced by the entire left and the entire media as agents of Putin. Why are they doing that? And by the way, when we actually join this war in force, what will they do to anyone who objects to it? Ooh, they're going to punish people. You watch. But with this in mind, we were a little bit surprised to see Toria Nuland essentially admit last week that she did it. Watch this.
Senator Cruz, like you, I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea.
Oh, she's excited about it. When it happened, they said, we're upset about it. We have no idea who did this. And if you think we had a hand in it, you're Putin.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday, and we've got the author of the book, Ukraine, A Warning for the World, Terry Pillay, here with us today. And Terry, that's one of the bad, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. Nuland is one of the bad, representing the United States and NATO, really, and the European Union. I think she is she's like, we call it the belly button. Where I come from in the military, the center point actor in a lot of this, not for the global effort, but for the Europe effort for sure. And I just want to dive into that because I want to get into the globalist goal because this is much bigger than just the territory that's called Ukraine or the Eastern European nations that are in NATO or not, or NATO nations or not. But before we do that, let's take this question from the live audience. We do have a hand up over there. AJ, go ahead with your question for Mr. Pillay.
Thank you for the mic, Colonel. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with your guest. I have one question, and that is, I've been hearing incendiary statements regarding Russia and Ukraine conflict. It's not necessarily my area, but in various social media platforms, I'm sure you can attest that there are a lot of people who do not know much about the conflict or the sides that are in it, yet they would like to, discuss it. One of these incendiary statements is that everybody from the current Russian border to the east of Vienna are just Russians in denial. Now, I think part of this is just intellectual laziness, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because I've been hearing it more and more often, and I just wanted to see what your take is on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, so basically you want to understand what is the demographic and the way that the population is spread in Ukraine, okay? So basically this is due to the way that this geopolitical puzzle has been constituted. After the First World War, the Hungarian Austrian Empire has been split. And the western part of Ukraine that used to be Polish has been reattached to the social entity of Ukraine, okay? So basically you have the Volhynia and the Galicia region that has been attached to Ukraine. You had the Transcarpathian region, which is a mountaineer region that was belonging to Hungary that has been reattached to this entity. You have a part of Romania that is set in the region of Chernivtsi that used to be Romanian. The eastern part of Ukraine is a little bit different. The Bolshevik, after the 1917 revolution, decided, in fact, to reattach the Donbass, meaning the Donetsk and the Lugansk region, to the entity of Ukraine, because Ukraine was essentially an agriculture area, and therefore they didn't have the financial resource on an economical point of view to make sure that this entity will be viable on the economical point of view. So basically the Bolshevik has been deciding that the Donbass would be completely reattached to Ukraine. The south of Ukraine used to be Russian. Actually, Odessa was a city that has been established by the Duke of Richelieu, that was in fact the nephew of the Cardinal of Richelieu, who used to be the Prime Minister of Louis XIV. And you have Crimea that is very particular because it has always been Russian, but for a specific commodity of water and electricity management and administrative management, they decided, in fact, to reattach the parliament of Crimea to Kiev for one reason. Systematically, when people had, in fact, to do their administrative renewing of passport and so on, they had, in fact, to go through the Strait of Kerch, but there was no bridge. So basically, they had to take a boat, and then had to take, after that, a train to go to Moscow, and then to come back. The round trip was taking something like 12 to 15 days. So basically, they decided, in fact, to reattach the parliament of Crimea to Kiev in the way that there will be a sort of more flexibility to the people to make sure that they will not lose any time, okay? So basically, when you look at this picture, you realize that, in fact, this is a patchwork of different civilization, but also of religion, because the west part of Ukraine is mostly Catholic, Roman Catholic. The full Ukraine is Orthodox, with a a big community of Jewish people in the region of Odessa and the region of not Zaporozhye, but this is a smaller region that is on the west part of Kiev, southwest part of Kiev. Okay, is that
absolutely
enough
my question is one of my questions? You just answered it, Terry, and that is that to give the American people that might listen to this show an understanding that you cannot just say the Ukrainian people and mean one homogeneous group of people, like you can't almost do that anywhere in the world, but especially in this country because of all that patchwork that you just laid out very beautifully. But it leads me to the question I opened this segment with, and we'll put up chart 3 there, the global end state, or what is their intention here? Because it's more than just about the territory of this this country that's now called Ukraine, and the issue between Russians and Russia protecting them, and ethnic Russians being killed by others in the Ukrainian government. The globalists have really taken this on as their centerpiece to achieve their end state by 2030 that you have laid out here in this chart. Why did they choose Ukraine as that target area to achieve the goal?
You're completely right to underline the fact that the unicity of Ukraine that most of the mainstream media tried, in fact, to sell to the public does not exist at all. So basically, it took me quite a while to understand the full pictures that has been bringing, in fact, this conflict on the table. If we are looking at most of the events that has been developing for the last 10 years, and you look at them completely separately, like a silhouette, you will not understand the global picture. So basically what I would like to do right now is to describe most of those events that is bringing on the table the strategy that the globalists have been putting together. Because what we're facing here is not a conflict between Ukraine and Russia. This conflict here is just a sort of pretext to achieve a much bigger goal. So in 2014, we had, in fact, the reversing of the government in Ukraine. Therefore, this has been triggering a civil war. This civil war has been frozen by the election of Donald Trump for one reason, and this is something that I was discussing with General Vallely, who is a very good friend, is that one of the knowledge to integrate the technology to North Korea to build their ICBM weapons. Because you need to understand that when the coup has been developing in Ukraine, in Kiev, Russia decided, in fact, to cut off completely the ties of the Russian army with the industrial military complex of Ukraine, because the confidence was not on the table anymore. And you know that in this field, when it's about national security, when it's about military technology, you need to be very confident with the different partner you work with. And at that moment, as NATO was putting their feet inside of Ukraine, Russia decided, in fact, to cut off the ties. So therefore, the full complex, military complex, industrial complex in Dnipropetrovsk had absolutely no financial resources because it didn't have any customers. So basically, Kolomoisky has been taking all the technologies and went to sell it on the black market. And this is the reason why, in fact, Donald Trump has been deciding, in fact, to stop the collaboration with the Ukrainian, and he did not want to listen to Poroshenko anymore. Then after that,
Right.
So basically,
well, let's break right there, Terry, and we'll take a commercial break, and we'll pick it back up when we come back, and we'll add in one of the tools they developed, which is the digital Fourth Reich, as you aptly characterize this capability and what they're using to achieve this goal of the New World Order by 2030. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday. Ukraine is a warning to the world.
BellaPatriot.com. Let me explain to you what this is. This is an elixir. It's a daily elixir. It is a collagen, and it also has something known as astaxanthin that crosses the brain-blood barrier, that's loaded with antioxidants to take on the free radicals. And then it has something called cat's claw. That is from a bark on a vine in Peru. So these are three very powerful ingredients. Now, if you go to BellaPatriot.com, there are your science and clinical trials, right? And if you want to read the science, there it is. You don't get nearly 80 clinical trials for nothing. So again, you want to talk about science, the information behind it, this is it. We highly urge you to check it out. The results for Melissa and I have been very powerful. She and I take it each and every day. It's very simple. You just rip the top, drink it, and then throw away the container. We would urge you to go there, order it now, click and order now, and get your subscription.
Consumers often ask, what should I expect when I take the Bella Grace Elixir? And the answer's varied. It really depends on what your health and wellness needs are. I would consider this as your foundational core product for a whole range of health and wellness issues. Let me give you a few examples. If you're a little bit older and you have some joint health issues, some problems with mobility and discomfort, the elixir is going to be your best friend. If you have some skin health issues, wrinkles, hydration, aging, all of those elements are going to be benefited from the elixir, including age spots. Now, if you're in a younger demographic, maybe visual health is where you need some assistance. Eye fatigue, dry eyes, all of those are going to be benefited by the elixir. It's a core product because it benefits so many.
Mindlessly and uncritically spread it. So too did all sorts of people with the HR title of journalist and corporate media. Here, for example, we see unsurprisingly, the tweet from the now fired CNN host Brian Stelter. And his tweet was just very representative of how the corporate media constantly just repeats claims like parrots with no questioning of any kind. Here is his tweet, quote, pro-Russian Twitter accounts hype misleading claims and, quote, anti-establishment propaganda about the East Palestine derailment, quote, using Elon Musk's new verification system to expand their reach while creating the illusion of credibility. David Klepper reports. By reports, he means took this new report from the Omidyar-funded group and just wrote up the press release, and that was the end of the story. In response to Brian Stelter's tweet, I asked him a set of questions that, of course, he ignored, that to me were just very obvious, are the questions that if somebody tried to give me a report like that, I would immediately ask. There you see my response, quote, which are the pro-Russian accounts? Who determines who is, quote, pro-Russia? How was that determination made? Do any of these questions enter your head even for a second before you just uncritically pass along claims like these? Now, even just the small amount of research reveals who it is who funds this group, and we'll get to that in a second, but we emailed this group, Reset, to ask exactly those questions. If we can put this on the screen, here was the email, where in order to do this reporting, we asked, quote, number one, where is the list of pro-Russian accounts? In other words, if you're claiming that this came from pro-Russian accounts, who are these pro-Russian accounts? Number two, how is this determination made? How do you decide who is pro-Russian and not? Is opposition to the U.S. proxy war in Ukraine sufficient to become, quote, pro-Russian? Who knows? It's a secret list and a secret formula. Number three, has anyone reviewed the list to verify its accuracy? And number four, please provide a few sample names of those who are on it. You could tell by a couple of the quotes mentioned in the AP article which...
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live here at Patriot.tv and X-Spaces simulcast and talking with the author of the book, Ukraine, A Warning for the World. And before we went to the break, Terry Pillay, we were talking about the globalist in-state goal, which is that new world order, one world type government. And the tools that they were using, you mentioned the COVID operation that put Donald Trump really out of office, but what Glenn Greenwald there, formerly of The Intercept, and by the way, is a left-wing American, not a right-wing person at all, describing what you termed in your book as the digital Fourth Reich, a big piece of it, in the context of the Russia hoax. Now, that was a 2023 clip, but he was going all the way back, and because it's not just about censorship, it's about an influence war, an information war on the people of the world, using this tool called the digital Fourth Reich, isn't it?
In fact, what is happening is that you have an organization that has been set up after the Second World War that is called the Bilderberg Group. This group is split in two pieces. You have the European parts and you have the American parts. Those people are the most influential people in the world and the richest people in the world. And they have been leveraging a certain numbers of transversal organizations, and they have been putting their people within those organizations. If you look at who is controlling the who right now, this is Bill Gates. Who is controlling the wealth? This is Klaus Schwab, whose grandfather was very, very close to Hitler. If you look at the ESG, meaning the environmental and social governance, this is handled by Soros. So basically, those guys, they are their friends, and they are using, in fact, those transversal organizations to put the control on population within four axes. You have the social axe, and this is Soros that is taking care of it. So they are imposing the LGBT rules, which are minorities, and they enforce the rules to accept, in fact, deviance behavior by law. And therefore, by this mechanism, they are trying to influence the people, control the way, and putting the people under control. Because if you are accepting things that for you it's not normal, in fact, you are submitting yourself to those regulators. Soros is organizing in the world the migrations of different populations that should not mix with Occidental civilization. In Europe, for example, you have Africans.
Chart 7. Bring up number 7, Mr. Producer. I think we've got a chart for you there. What you're describing, what you're talking about, Thierry. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So Soros is organizing the African migration in Europe because he thinks, and also the Middle East, because he thinks that if there is no identity on the cultural, on the religion, and the mindset point of view, then people will be becoming sort of consumers. And therefore, you would be able, in fact, to control them more easily. This is also a way for me, from my perspective point of view, to impose the pedophilia. And this is absolutely scandalous. This is outrageous because they forbid the people to talk. And look at what's happening in Canada right now. They have the kids that are imposed to see some trans shows within the schools where this should not occur. The schools is made, in fact, to teach the kids technologies, mathematics, culture, science, and so on. It is not about, in fact, to educate their sexuality. This is completely, how to say, this is not acceptable. You have also the environmental acts on which, in fact, Bill Gates is working. They are trying to make you understanding that the CO2 is not something that should be in the atmosphere. If you look at the rate of CO2 that is in the air, you will see that this is 0.04% of the constituents of the air. So therefore, if you are suppressing completely the CO2, then the plant, they wouldn't be able, in fact, to generate oxygen. So telling the people that the CO2 is bad is completely, it is a nonsense on a scientific point of view. And they are using kids like Greta Thunberg, who has absolutely no knowledge, no clue about what she's talking about. And they are using her, in fact, to influence the young people. With the COVID crisis, we have been putting the finger on something that is extremely dangerous. The WHO tried to impose a sort of agreement all over the world to be able, in fact, to take over the way that people need to handle their health. And in regard of the fact that they have been forbidding all the treatments to cure the people from COVID, we can imagine what they have in mind, in fact, to control the people on their mobility, but also regarding their health. So basically, we need to be very careful about this agreement. And if Donald Trump is taking over the White House again, he will have to make sure that this is not happening. There is a fourth axe on which they are working is the CBDC. And today we see that the American economy is in a very bad shape, like in Europe. I have been seeing news today, for example, that Biden wants to impose a 44.5 taxes on everybody. That means that the economy in the US is in a stage that is alarming. So what they try to do, in my opinion, is they try to make a sort of soft landing of the economy in the way that they will be wiping out the debt by imposing a new currency with a different parity between the real dollar and the CBDC dollar. So this should not apply for one reason, is that instead of controlling and stopping the transaction between banks to bank, from the provider to the customer, they will be able, in fact, to control the access to your own wallet and to the usage of your money. So therefore, they are trying to put together a sort of four-axis control in the way that they will be able, in fact, to impose their new world order. So right now, you would say, you would ask me, why in fact the conflict in Ukraine? This is very simple. The last big country in which you are going to find all the resources necessary to develop your economy is Russia. They have gas, they have oil, they have uranium, they have metal, they have aluminum, they have seeds like the grains of oats. They have everything necessary, in fact, to run your economy. So basically what I wanted to do beside imposing the New World Order, is to put down the government of Vladimir Putin, because this is a very, very strong government, and put a liberal on top of it in the way that they will be accessing the resource. That is the first point. And the second point, because they would be able, in fact, to control a big country and install this New World Order. And
yeah,
as soon as you
great power is almost always about resources. Ideology is basically a cover. We got to take our last break, Terry. But when we come back, I want to dive into that more. And this term, the World Economic Forum Mafia, the World Economic Mafia, and the World Health Organization. There are all these tools that are being used to try to control us, to have an end state of this new world order. And who controls that new world order is where I want to go as we come to the end of the show with the author of Ukraine, A Warning to the World, Thierry Pele. We'll be right back.
The markets are getting crazy, and now is the time to protect yourself from economic turmoil. Silver is in the headlines right now and creating lots of excitement as the price of silver is extremely attractive compared to gold. A call to Swiss America gets you the scoop on whether the silver opportunity is for real. What you'll discover will really blow your mind. Today, silver faces a huge shortage due to the rising demand by military, solar, electric cars, and computers, all of which depend on silver. But right now, silver is priced to sell according to worldwide experts. Now, to help you get started, Swiss America is offering beautiful United States Walking Liberty half dollars, issued by the U.S. Mint from 1916 to 1947 and minted in 90% pure silver for a special introductory price. Limit of $250 per customer while supplies last. So call the number on your screen or visit SwissAmerica.com, because now is the time to rediscover silver.
Joining me at the news desk now is Rebecca Walzer of WalzerWealth.com. She has been a regular guest on my TV show, Brennan House Live, for a long time. She's not just an economics expert, but she's an attorney. Rebecca, you have a large firm. How many people work for your firm?
Just about 30, yes.
30. And
yes.
Tell me, how can people prepare for what's coming with the end of the dollar as we know it?
The end of the fiat system as we know it globally. We are moving to hard asset-backed currencies again. Thank the Lord, because fiat is where we get into all the problems. When you have debt-based currency, you have debt-based problems. And the United States, unfortunately, since 2020 has not stopped spending at pandemic levels. This is systemic, and it is unsustainable, and it is coming to an end, especially with the addition of Saudi Arabia and the UAE to the BRICS nations. This is what controls our petrodollar. This is the threat immediately in 2024.
For more information, WalzerWealth.com. WalzerWealth.com. She is not your traditional financial planner. Find out why at WalzerWealth.com.
Let's talk a little bit about the Ukraine situation. We are in Europe. Europe, it feels the crisis perhaps more than the other continents, so this is obviously being felt at so many levels. It's almost unbelievable, but we are worried around the world about the prospect or the possibility of, nuclear weapons, or tactical nuclear weapons being used. Who would have thought that 4 years back or 5 years back you'd have a session in the WEF on that? You wouldn't, but now you are. Is that something we really need to be thinking about, that we are talking about a situation in the Ukraine which is really spiraled out of control?
There's always a danger for further escalations, but it's not only the Ukraine crisis that is negatively impacting the geopolitics of the world. We have East Asia and the Chinese Sea. We also have the border between China and India that is not that peaceful for the moment. So we need now to solve things at the negotiating table and speak to each other and inject trust instead of trying to solve things fighting. On the Ukraine war, it is Russia that tried to invade Ukraine. They have never questioned the borders of Ukraine, and the attacks we're seeing now is breaking also with basic international law. You should never attack civilians. There should never be a target for a war. How this will play out moving forward is hard to see, but of course, Mr. Putin thought he was going to take Kiev in a day, or a week, or a month. That's not where it is now, and the amount and the strength of the Ukrainian people, I think, has surprised us all. They're not going to give in on this thing. So what we have to hope for is that there is no further de-escalation that has huge ramifications for Europe and the rest of the world.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday, and we're talking to the author of the book, Ukraine, A Warning to the World, Thierry Pele, about all of these pieces of machinery, is what I call it, that are going into the effort of organizations like the World Economic Forum and its mafia partner, the World Health Organization. You know, they meet usually simultaneously in close proximity to each other so they can do their planning of these operations where they're intent on controlling us. Terry, and you talked about that briefly in the last segment. This World Health Organization, there's a new attempt to establish a new agreement, and I'm part of a group called the Sovereignty Coalition and the Stop Vax Passports Task Force that here in America that's trying to bring visibility to that and get our congressmen and senators and hopefully President Trump when he's reelected to make that go away, because we can't sign up to a treaty that gives World Health Organization bureaucrats the opportunity to exercise sovereignty over me.
Well, you know, Europe today is under the control of the European Commission, and this is a nest of corrupted people. We saw, in fact, a part of this corruption through the contract that has been signed up by the European Commission and Pfizer. Von der Leyen, the president of the Commission, never wanted, in fact, to release all the documents constituting, in fact, this agreement. And I do believe that there was a commission of $760 million that has been disappearing. So what they are trying to put together as a mechanism is a sort of a sky open laboratory to impose this new world order by setting up rules that would be spread all over the world. Example, the censorship. During the COVID crisis, nobody had the right to talk about the side effects of the vaccine. Why? This is in the Hippocrates definition management of the way that the medicine need, in fact, to be handled. A doctor had to do whatsoever is necessary to cure and to save his patient. And those guys, they have been imposing mechanism, psychological mechanism, to forbid to talk about problem. And this is the type of mechanism that they want to roll out all over the world, because they want submissive population. The level of corruption that we are seeing right now within the financing of the conflict in Ukraine is absolutely gigantic. I want to underline to the American people that $272 billion of your tax money has been sent to this country, and they are not able, in fact, to face a small country like Russia, which is constituted of 146 million people, with certainly less amount of budget to counterpart the gigantic amount of money that has been put on the table. So what I have been discovering is that most of the material that has been sent from United States and from Europe was sold on the black market. And I do believe strongly that a part of this money has been coming back, in fact, to the people that has been deciding to continue the conflict. And this is the reason why they do not want, in fact, to solve it. That is the first reason for which this conflict continue, and there is so many people that are dying in Ukraine. But more than anything else, what we have been observing is that the Ukrainian government is just pumping the money, and they are spending their money all over the world, in fact, to buy real estate assets. So what do we want to achieve here? What do we want to achieve? If those people, they wanted, in fact, to stop the conflict, first of all, what they would have to do is to listen to the requirements of security of Russia, because Vladimir Putin never wanted this conflict. If you look at what happens several days before the triggering of this SVO operation. Russia has been buying an amount of funds at a level of 2.4 of the United States debt. If you wanted to attack a country, knowing that the sanction will be falling, never ever you would have been spending this amount of money knowing that it would be freezing. So what I am observing here is that there is a strong will to double down the situation and to make sure that Ukraine will be fulfilled with weapons until the last Ukrainian, because Biden knows pertinently that if the conflict is stopping and if they manage, in fact, to put a settlement together, on the election point of view for October, November, that will be the end for him. And therefore, the full plan of the globalists will be falling apart. That is the reason why they want to double down and to continue, when in fact, if you look at the Ukrainian army that has been losing 1.4 million people, they are sending young people on the front line, they are sending very old people where they want to go like that. It's impossible, because an army needs to be structured and need to be managed. And you need to have people that has been trained in the way that they can handle, in fact, the operation, which is not the case anymore. This is the reason why this country is going to collapse completely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So if we don't stop them and they achieve this new world order, who is in control of it? Because the United States is being driven down by Biden's administration and weakened severely. They're going after Russia, like. To get the resources, like you talked about. So who controls the new world order? The communist Chinese?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I do believe that this is the big guys above Wall Street that are taking the decisions. Unfortunately, I cannot give names. I have names in mind, but I need the proof of it. And until I don't find this proof, I cannot announce who is pulling the strings, because I can be subject to lawsuit. You understand
Absolutely.
what I mean?
Well,
if you
I completely understand. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are some hints. Look at the way that Larry Fink is behaving during different forums in which he's interfering. At a point in time, I've been hearing this guy saying, we want to force the changes. We want to force people by any means, even by frightening them, in fact, to cut off the financial aspect of their companies. And if they are not following on our requirements, we will be putting them down. So basically, those guys, they are using financial force and to enforce, in fact, policies. And this is not the way they should be successful, because at a point in time, you know the human nature, how it is. The more you push on one side, the more you can be sure that there will be some resistance. So the grand plan that they have been putting together is about to collapse. And this is at that moment that this is extremely dangerous. Because, you know, it's like hunting. If you're shooting a bear and you're not killing it, what is going to happen? He's going to retaliate. Before to die, he will attack you, in fact, to put you down. So basically, this is that moment, the next 6 months before the US election, that we need to be very, very careful regarding what those guys they are going to put in terms of policies to control us.
Well, thank you, Terry. It's a fascinating book. I want to get you back just to delve into the economic side of it separately, and then the energy side of it separately. Maybe that's all one show, but I think I could get 2 shows out of it if you'll agree to come back someday in the next couple of months. But you're absolutely right. The evidence is all around us. The bear is wounded, and I'm not talking about Russia. I'm talking about the New World Order and everything that goes into it. So Ukraine really is a warning to the world. Go get the book at Amazon. You can follow Thierry on X. His X address has been up the entire show. Tomorrow's Whistleblower Wednesday here on the Rob Maness Show. We've got J. Michael Waller of the Centers for Security Policy, and we're talking about his book and some other things that he's been seeing out there in the deep state world. I'm Rob Maness at Patriot.tv. I'll see you tomorrow.